I've always felt the attraction to all things spooky. I can't really even put it into words what's so fascinating about horror, but I have always had a deep desire to scare myself. I loved ghost stories, and I even tried contacting spirits myself using a handmade Ouija board with friends at sleepovers. You know, girl stuff. During my childhood, ghost stories moved from your friends' bedrooms to the virtual campfire of the internet. I was instantly hooked when I learned about these short horror stories known as creepypastas. I had already searched out scary stories and those totally real ghost pictures online, and now I had discovered a whole community where anyone could share their own spooky tales. My favorites were the cursed video game, lost episode, and the internet-related creepypastas, like, you know, the crappiest ones. I couldn't get enough of them. I think I read like every single game pasta at least on the official wiki. I remember how creeped out I was while watching someone play a cursed copy of Majora's Mask with unsettling reversed music and weird glitches. The theater and misfortune were the tits. I tried to watch the self-delete mouse video, but I was too scared to actually watch it to the end. The same thing happened with that one video where a guy just stared at you in a red room. Yes, I found this scary at the time. I didn't actually believe the story, you know, that I might go insane and mail my eyeballs to a YouTube HQ. But something about the staring man made me too nervous to even look at the screen. Like, what if something weird happened with the video? Like a jump scare. At that point, I had already learned my lesson about possible screamers. It was also hard for me to even look at the Jeff the Killer image, and I had nightmares about that face even before I read the story. When I finally did, I realized, wow, this is actually dog shit. That's what happens, man. The beauty of the creepypasta was that anyone could make one, and not everyone is Stephen King tier horror meister, especially at 12. As an adult, I love looking back at the early 2010s, the era that is often called the golden age of creepypastas, when most of the well-known stories, images, and characters were born. I still watch videos about them from time to time, when I'm feeling nostalgic for the gone-by era, when the idea of refreshing a YouTube page 666 times was actually creepy to me. But instead of trying to get spooked, I nowadays seek them out to laugh, because you know, most of them were silly and try hard. I think sonic.exe is like one of the funniest things I've ever read.
Pingus! Pingus, Pingus, Pingus! No!
And I like jokes making fun of the creepypasta cliches, like something being hyper-realistic. Even though most agree that the golden age of the creepypasta has passed us by, while the term is still being used for new stories, I think it's important to remember them. They say something about us, what we were afraid of. They're fascinating both as a part of internet culture and their long timeline of telling spooky stories to each other for entertainment. They don't really differentiate from generations and centuries-old stories about demons and ghosts haunting their protagonist. Instead of the devil, it's just the Slenderman or Jeff the Killer or Sonic now. Man, our current culture is big. Yeah, unsurprisingly, people have always loved telling scary stories to each other. They are a huge part of folklore pretty much anywhere at any time period. Like even a caveman probably told tales about, I don't know, saber-toothed cats. Especially in the past, the point of the scare was often to teach a lesson, like don't do dumb shit or something really horrible happens to you. So they were both entertaining and educational. Storytelling is important for us because it strengthens social cohesion, the feeling of belonging. With horror, a person learns how to face and control fear. Horror stories get you more familiar with feelings that would otherwise have severe real-life consequences. You're experiencing fear without the actual danger. Stories are told in a safe, controlled environment, so the fear usually goes away quickly, replaced with enjoyment and excitement. Being a little bit afraid in a comfortable space detaches you from everyday life. It's entertaining escapism in an otherwise mundane existence. Film scholar Robin Wood has also noted the subconscious elements of horror media. Monsters represent our repressed thoughts and feelings, and we project taboo thoughts on these other horror creatures. In the past, fear of the supernatural was far more common and real. The existence of beings like ghosts, elves, fairies, gnomes, etc. was common sense. In the Middle Ages, priests lectured their congregations how the devil is everywhere, always watching and always trying to make you stray away from God. Inspired by this, people all over Europe started to cook up their own folk stories about this stalker devil. Families huddle together in candlelight, and the storyteller recites how they know this one guy who knows another guy who saw the devil in person. In these folk tales, the devil is scary most of the time, punishing people for sinning. Like in a story of a young girl who was vain and enjoyed dancing too much. This of course meant she was sinful, so the devil made her dance until she dropped dead. So the story is carried on the priest's message of don't sin or else. Other folk folktales are more about general good manners. And I'm sorry, but this is pretty gruesome. There's this common folktale in Finland warning against going ape in the sauna. If you can't behave during sauna time, meaning for example you're being too loud, the devil comes in and skins you alive. Whoa there. So violent and gory stories aren't a modern thing. Some of these folktales are pretty messed up as well. But the stories weren't always horrifying warnings. Sometimes they were about someone striking a deal with the devil and actually profiting from it, fooling him and getting away with it with their new riches. The belief in personalized evil started to quietly diminish since the 18th century, along with the belief in elves and other folk creatures. This of course didn't happen overnight. It started with urban intellectuals, slowly spreading to common people and the countryside. The devil moved back as a metaphoric symbol of evil, not an actualized threat that tries to get you every day like in the Middle Ages. Especially with urbanization starting from the 19th century, people's worldview changed and expanded, bringing new values and fears. So horror stories needed more relevant monsters for modernizing rational people. Folklore became urban legends and less people actually believed in the stories about the devils and killer gnomes. Stories became more about things like ghosts and murderers. Now the devil has been largely replaced by devil worshippers or other cultists. A slightly more realistic threat. Slightly. Horror culture became commercialized, making these feelings of anxiousness and fear even more controllable. You kinda play along with the fear, not actually being terrified. Horror stories became a kid thing in the 20th century. Before that, they were shared and believed by children and adults alike. Now it's become children's culture, made for kids by kids. Kids share horror stories as a way of training each other to handle difficult feelings of fear and anxiety, since they are of course more inexperienced with them. Learning to come face to face with fear feels easier with peers, other kids, not condescending adults. Now even the silliest stories make more sense. It's easier to handle these feelings when the story is cartoonishly scary and gory. So I see creepypastas as another part of the continuum of this ancient phenomenon of horror storytelling. They are like modern campfire stories, the difference being that instead of word to mouth, these stories are now readily available online whenever you want to experience them. You can find echoes of the past folktales in them. The devil might still appear to you during a ritual, who might make a deal with you or make you mad at you. Certain stories still warn us against dangers. Don't play this random copy of a video game you found at a garage sale, or don't go to the dark web. And the characters still face horrifying ends. And most importantly, the function is the same, learning to face and control fear. Young people have challenged themselves to visit scary places for the longest time, at least since the Middle Ages. These tests of courage were, for example, visiting a cemetery at night or a place where a witch was believed to be buried. This, of course, is preparing you to face fear like stories themselves. And sure, these kinds of challenges or legend trips are still around to this day. I actually know one from the town I grew up in. It goes like this, that if you go to a local cemetery at night and circle around this chapel at certain times, you are supposed to sit on a nearby bench and this ghost of a lady is supposed to appear and sit next to you. And this was like an actual person who lived at the turn of the 20th century. Additionally, we have the ritual creepypastas that are closest to the old folktales. You do a bunch of convoluted stuff and you will see the devil or a spirit that will kill you if you're not careful. Going mad and dying of fear are common elements in both modern and old legends. They make it clear that playing around with certain things like death or a cursed YouTube video is dangerous. Overall, you can see creepypastas as modern spaces of horror. You don't need to go to a cemetery for a dare anymore, you just watch a cursed video or image to show yourself or others you're brave enough, since more of our lives are lived online for better or for worse. Some scholars have noted that for kids, scary stories are part of growing up, sort of an initiation ritual to adulthood. This is because it's even more important for them to try out being scared, since, growing up is kinda scary. You try to figure out who you are, what your place in the world is, and all these things like career choices, colleges, do your peers think you're cool, possibly even romantic relationships. What do you stand for, your values, hopes and fears? All this while both your body and your mind is a rapidly transforming mess and you're kinda insane. Yeah, it's a lot. Youth culture in general helps to handle it all when kids try to figure this out together. Kids tend to oppose the adult world by forming their own subcultures with their own values and ideals. You can view creepypastas as their own subculture. Kids get together to share stories, fan art, even fan games, and find new like-minded friends. And it's definitely something your parents won't get. So it's no wonder creepypastas were most popular among tweens and teenagers. Angsty teens who believe nobody understands them gravitate to these stories about the serial killers and other monsters, finding comfort in them. I've noticed that in Cursed Video Game and Last Episode creepypastas, they do imply these themes of preparing for adulthood. In these kinds of stories, your favorite childhood media like games and cartoons are twisted and corrupted into something horrifying. I feel like the writers and readers alike are kinda subconsciously distancing themselves from their childhood, letting it go as they prepare to step into the grown-up world. And this grown-up world seems uncertain and foreign, and these feelings of insecurity are then projected on childhood media. Familiar comfort shows and games become something unpredictable, something they are not supposed to be. Oh, you liked Bob the Builder as a kid? Well, what if there was like a secret lost episode where Bob's eyes like turn red and he stares right at you and then he like kills everyone? Wouldn't that be scary? I'm guessing the writers of these stories were on the younger side compared to even other creepypasta genres. That's likely why 99% of them sucked ass. The idea of a twisted cartoon show or a family-friendly game is probably most fascinating to preteens, who have been described as being in a sort of liminal space between the safety of home and the unpredictable outside world. Last episodes and haunted games work in the same liminal space, something between the lies of familiarity, security and comfort, and foreign uncertain horror. This is silly, sure, and you might think I'm looking too deeply into this. I don't think so. I don't think it's a coincidence that so many stories are about childhood nostalgia. And look, even stupid kids' ghost stories have their own value and meaning. Children's media deserves to be taken seriously because kids themselves take it so. So it's important for adults to understand it, or in this case we, the former creepypasta kids, to understand what we were actually doing while enjoying these stories. Like, bro, let me overanalyze sonic.exe in peace. Kids tend to try and act more adult-like than they actually are, doing things they perceive as mature. This also means that violence and gore is seen as cool and adult, something they shouldn't be experiencing. Kids find the forbidden alluring, so they seek these visceral bodily reactions by gore material out of curiosity. And if you know anything about creepypastas, you already know they tend to go way overboard with the blood and guts. It feels like the gorier the story is, the more mature it becomes, supposedly. So creepypastas might play a part in a young person's struggle to figure out life and themselves. And during the golden age of creepypastas, they tried to do this in a changing world with a financial crisis, globally affecting conflicts, and social media becoming more and more important part of our daily lives. It's comforting to work the uncertainties and insecurities through fiction and subcultures surrounding them. During the Second World War, there was a boom of ghost stories. Soldiers and their loved ones alike shared stories where they experienced something paranormal, for example, seeing the spirit of a fallen soldier at the battlefield. This was a way to cope with the loss and trauma that haunted countless people during the era. It was a comforting idea that your brother-in-arms, son, father, brother, husband is still out there somewhere, and you can sense them one last time from beyond the grave. Similar trauma response happened after the 2011 catastrophe in Japan, when people shared tons of experiences with the dead. Not all of the ghosts were loved ones. For example, some taxi drivers reported someone getting in and asking to get to a town that was destroyed by the tsunami. Commonly, these ghosts hadn't even realized they were dead, and once they understood this, they vanished. So horror stories can be used as a way to process traumas, and it doesn't even have to be a collective trauma caused by disasters or wars. It can be more about personal struggles. During puberty, most feel some kind of anxiety about belonging. Teenagers desperately want to be accepted, especially by their peers. I feel like the creepypasta community is most attractive to those who feel like outcasts, those who feel different from others. Like, have you noticed that a lot of the creepypasta stories are about teenagers who are abused either by other teens or sometimes by their parents? These protagonists then become crazy murderers as revenge or because they lost their mind under the weight of the trauma. Like Jeff the Killer, who in the most well-known version is a 13-year-old boy being bullied. These insane boys come to a house full of adults to beat up Jeff with fucking vodka bottles, throwing off their guns. And the parents do nothing. I'm imagining them just staring while a bunch of 13-year-olds are punching and kicking each other like they're in the goddamn UFC. But that's okay, because Jeff punches one of them in the heart and he dies. This story is so fire. As he lay there, bleeding to death, he let out an ominous smile. What's so funny? asked Jeff. Keith pulled out the lighter and switched it on. What's funny, he said, is that you're covered in bleach and alcohol. Jeff's eyes widened as Keith threw the lighter at him. As soon as the flame made contact with him, the flames ignited the alcohol in the vodka. While the alcohol burned him, the bleach Skinner. Jeff let out a terrible screech as he caught on fire. He tried to roll out the fire, but it was no use. The alcohol had made him a walking inferno. He ran down the hall and fell down the stairs. Creepypasta community is full of edgy teenage boys and girls like this who suffer and become crazed serial killers, like Jane the Killer, Eyeless Jack, Hoodie, Tiki Toby. God damn these fucking names. These kinds of characters seem to be fan favorites, at least if you look at the amount of fan art made of them. They are often depicted as these cutesy anime boys that are also epic and cool. I feel like this is a form of catharsis for a lot of fans of these characters, meaning a way to express and purge strong emotions, a violent fantasy. And now I want to make it clear that I don't mean the fans want to actually hurt others. It's a way to process one's own difficult feelings and traumas like loneliness, being bullied and outcasted. Some of the fan art outright states that these characters are heroes to them or that they have found help and comfort from them. They can relate to their struggles since they might be going through similar situations, feeling kinship with them. Other violent media works the same cathartic way for some, be it horror movies or extreme metal music.
It's happening right here, right now in Habbo Hotel. The ultimate hangout place on the planet, packed with friends. See you in Habbo Hotel. Where else?
In June of 2012, a popular online game named Habbo Hotel was in hot water. British Channel 4 News made a scandalous report that this site, based on social interaction that mostly children use, is also a twisted playground for older, predatory individuals trying to take advantage of kids. They claimed that there was little to no moderation to protect the young players who went to virtual strip clubs and brothels. What followed was that several cases came to light where courts convicted criminals who had used Habbo as their hunting ground. Sulake, the company behind the game, got a huge backlash. Journalists and parents alike felt they weren't doing enough. Both adults and kids realized, possibly for the first time, that the internet is not always a safe haven. Kids can be in danger out there. I feel like creepypastas sometimes reflect this change on our viewpoint on the internet. The utopia-like mental image from the 90s, early 2000s, where the whole world is connected in harmony, was broken by these kinds of scandals. Anything is indeed possible on the internet, for better or for worse. So a lot of creepypastas came out where the premise is about an evil website. In Smile Dog, someone gets a classic chain letter email that forces you to send forward a scary dog picture to spread the word. After visiting spooky websites, desktop wallpapers are changed, videos of horrifying events are found, and deep web criminals find out where you live. The line between reality and fiction gets blurred, and some swear things like red rooms are real. Since it is possible to find actual criminal material on the internet, it's easy to believe in these legends, even the wild stuff like snuff live streams on the deep web. So the internet can be dangerous, and you should be careful out there. And during the 2000s, 2010s, the internet started to affect more and more on our lives. So it makes sense that stories were made that warn you to be careful out there. Like, even the surface web isn't always safe. Remember how irrationally scary computer viruses were when you were younger? Like, I almost took my pants when I downloaded Linkin Park songs from LimeWire and got a virus. Like, I was half expecting my laptop to be taken over. In these internet-related stories, the danger comes into your own home. This also happens with other creepypasta genres, be it haunted games or lost episodes enjoyed in your room, or someone breaks into your house to stare at you while you sleep, and then steals your kidney. Even your home doesn't feel safe anymore, and no wonder, since the news show and tell real-life horrors 24/7, and we are hyper-aware of all the awful things happening around the world. At least in the West, we live in the safest era in history, yet we feel more unsafe than ever. The news and true crime media highlights the dangers of the world to the point where people start to overestimate them. The world seems to be full of murderers when violent crime is in reality declining. This uneasiness is projected on fiction, where outside horrors invade your home, the place where you're supposed to feel the safest. As we have noticed, creepypastas are kinda silly, mainly written by angsty kids who are more concerned with trying to be as edgy as possible than writing an actual good story. Of course, not all of them are absolute shit. Some do have decent suspenseful writing, but their reputation is not great. Some of the overused tropes are well known even outside the community. You don't need to read a single creepypasta to know the whole bloody eyes thing being a cliché creepypasta thing.
Let's creepypasta it.
You gotta make the... Here, I'll help. You gotta make the eyes black.
Everything's done.
There you go.
I put in a Nintendo cartridge and the nostalgia critic and Peter Griffin bled at me.
Some started to make parody creepypastas that made fun of these tropes. These trollpastas or crappypastas are intentionally written to be as awful and corny as possible. But the thing is, sometimes it's hard to tell if someone was genuinely trying to be spooky or if they were just trolling. Either way, some of these are pure comedy gold. I'd like to share with you some parts of a masterpiece, big literature named Wario Land 3 by Super Mario Man 1-1, the Edgar Allan Poe of our time. I recently got a game from my friend Frank. It was a copy of Wario Land 3 for the Game Boy Color. I immediately took it and he seemed more than happy to get rid of it. I asked him why and he just told me, "You'll see." I thought he just meant that it had a glitch. I'm hoping it does. Okay, there's a huge problem here. The game turned itself on last night, I don't know how. Wario Land turned on and it took me to the temple. The weird guy there said something in Latin. I looked it up and it said, "The game will determine your fate." Someone help me. This game is creepy as hell. I turned the game on today. It didn't even do the Game Boy Advance logo at the beginning. It just went straight to the game. The title screen was disturbing. It showed Wario digging like normal, but the sky was red and the clouds were black. Then Wario stopped digging. He jumped out of the hole and went off screen. When he returned, he was dragging something. When I realized what it was, I almost screamed. It was a dead body. Wario was moving himself. He took me to the room with the vampire bats. But there was something different. The bats were dead on the floor. Their wings were ripped off and nailed to the wall. The blood was dripping from the floor. I couldn't bear it. Why? Why did you take me here? I asked the screen. Wario broke the fourth wall and answered me. He's hurting them, he told me. He thinks it's fun. The pain entertains him. This is so shit, I'm sorry. I looked at him, a tear dripping from my eye. I was sad for them. I was sad for all of them. Something is definitely in my house. I was trying to sleep last night when I heard a bang from down the hallway. I jumped from my bed in a cold sweat. I grabbed my emergency Bowie knife and followed the bang. I opened the door to my bathroom and my heart stopped. In the mirror was a deformed Wario. His face was mangled and cut up. His mustache was cut into pieces and his eyes were gone, the sockets bleeding. I screamed at the top of my lungs and slammed the door. Another bang from the living room. I followed it. There wasn't anything there though. I looked out the window and there he was. Wario was standing in my driveway. I screamed again and ran into my room. I hid under the covers and cried for 20 minutes. Okay, you get the point. This is from the Trollpasta wiki, but some have wondered if the writer was being serious. And I don't blame them, because this really could be something that a child thinks is scary and good storytelling. Fucking Wario in the driveway. So creepypastas were important enough to get parodied. Some seem to put real effort in making up a funny story that resembles a serious creepypasta. Stories that play up the campiness are entertaining for sure, but they also prolong the idea of a creepypasta, helping to extend their lifespan as a cultural phenomenon. Same with the very folktale-like thing of taking an existing story and adding up to it. Like Slenderman has had a complex life after its creation on a simple Photoshop contest. So after the golden age of the creepypastas, the idea of them lived on, like, hey, remember those things? Oh yeah, and by the way, about the golden age thing, not everyone might agree with its dating in the early 2010s, and that's because there seems to be no consensus on what counts as a creepypasta. Like, is it the time it was made? Well, sometimes the word is used for every scary story, image or video, no matter when it was made. But yeah, more recent stories are also sometimes called creepypastas. What about the format? The pasta part, from the word copypasta has long been forgotten from the 4chan days, where many of the older stories got started. You are not expected to spam the story around the internet. That the caver is sometimes mentioned as the first creepypasta without the copypasta-like nature at all. Does it have to be on the creepypasta wiki? I think of that site when I think of creepypastas, since that was my go-to place to read them, but no single website should define what is or isn't a creepypasta, right? That would go against the nature of creepypastas, in my opinion. Like, anyone should be able to make them, and they can be posted and shared anywhere. But yeah, I have also been vague on what I mean by creepypastas, and that's simply because I haven't really thought about that before writing this part of the script. I think of the Jeff the Killers, Drowned Bens, and Slendermans because I'm old and those were back from my day. But sure, you can call Momo creepypasta too, or pirated game messages, or SCPs, whatever. Analog horror is creepypasta. It doesn't really matter, right? Like, who cares? What am I even rambling about here? Classic creepypastas are living kind of a renaissance right now. There are games and ARG projects that are heavily inspired by them. Sonic.exe has had a whole revival, a lot creepier than the original. Old heads can reminisce about the story and the older fan games, and Sonic.exe also gets a new audience who wasn't familiar with it before. Another thing is the growing interest in finding the origins of creepypasta-related images. People have spent a lot of time and effort to find where Jeff the Killer or Mario pasta images came from. These remakes and lost media hunts tell us how meaningful some still find creepypastas. Like, no one would care if they never mattered to anyone. They are understood as pieces of our cultural heritage, something that deserves to be preserved. To be shown to generations after us, like, this was us, we were like this. And that's why creepypastas still interest me after all these years, why I still listen to someone reading top 20 scariest creepypastas that will make you shit your pants and cry for mommy. The nostalgia plays a part in it, sure, but I hope I was able to explain that creepypastas are valuable pieces of internet era's cultural history. I remember when I was going through some archived papers from the Finnish broadcasting company for work reasons, I saw this document from the 70s that explained how the company should start preserving their material that would be saved for future researchers. The employee who wrote the document was speculating that maybe even those mundane and unimportant things like street views, commercials and bad music albums should also be preserved. In the future, they might be seen as fascinating. My point is that creepypastas might seem unimportant to some now, but I believe they will be valued in the future as documents that say something about us. What was it like to grow up in the late 2000s, early 2010s? How the cultural climate and the changing world affected us? What were we afraid of? What were our values and ideals? How we dealt with stepping into the unknown adulthood or being an outcast? Creepypastas might have been stupid crappy horror stories, but I certainly believe they were important stupid crappy horror stories.